He used to trust two people more than anyone in the world: his wife and the old man he grew up calling Uncle Eli. Now he's sitting in a packed courtroom, hands shaking, voice breaking, telling the judge, "I think my great-uncle is my daughter's real father, and I think my wife slept with him behind my back." The room goes dead silent. On one side of the courtroom, his wife stares at him with tear-filled eyes, whispering, "How can you think that of me?" On the other side, the elderly great-uncle, with trembling hands and a face carved by time and secrets, won't quite meet his gaze. Their little girl sits outside with a court worker, unaware that inside these walls, her entire story is being questioned. He remembers the way his daughter laughs just like Uncle Eli, the way they share the same smile, the way people at family dinners joked, "She looks more like him than her own father." At some point, the joke stopped being engrashado and started feeling like a knife. Now there's an envelope on the judge's desk. Inside it, one DNA test that can either prove he was destroyed by the two people he loved most, or prove that his suspicion is about to cost him everything. When that paper opens, who will you blame? The first time someone said his daughter looked more like his great-uncle than like him, Marcus laughed. It was a Sunday barbecue. Kids were running in the yard, smoke rolled off the grill, and an old speaker in the corner played songs everyone knew the lyrics to but pretended not to. Ava, 5 years old, spun in circles in a yellow dress, laughing so hard she could barely breathe. She tripped, fell on the grass, and burst into another fit of laughter. A short, slightly raspy laugh with a little snort at the end. Exactly like Uncle Eli. Aunt Rose pointed and shouted over the noise, "Oh my God, that girl is a mini Elias. Even her laugh sounds like his." Everyone laughed. Marcus too. Even Elias. The old man adjusted his glasses on his dark, lined face and smiled wide, deep wrinkles at the corners of his eyes. "That's because she got the best genes in the family," he joked, patting his chest. That day, it was nothing but a joke. But jokes have roots, and the more people water them, the deeper they grow. It wasn't just the laugh. There was the dimple in her left cheek, the one Marcus didn't have. The way she narrowed her eyes when she laughed. The way she scratched her chin when she was thinking. The way she crossed her arms when she was annoyed. All of it identical to Elias, right down to the posture. "She's all Eli," Marcus's grandmother would say proudly. "If I didn't know any better, I'd say he's her father." "Grandma, come on," Marcus would reply, laughing awkwardly. "Don't say that." But inside, the sentence stuck to him. If I didn't know any better. If I didn't know. At first, Marcus told himself the same logical thing every day. She copies what she sees. She's with him all the time. Of course she acts like him. And it made sense. Elias lived 3 streets away. Even in his 70s, he had more energy than half the younger men in the family. He had always been Uncle Eli to everyone. The one who showed up, the one who helped, the one who had time when no one else did. Who picked Ava up from school when Marcus was on long shifts? Elias. Who brought her tiny bags of candy, whispering, "Don't tell your mom?" Elias. Who sat on the floor with her to watch cartoons and, without realizing it, laughed at the same moments, with the same little snort? Elias. He helps us, Nadia would say, exhaustion in her voice as she checked the bank app again. If it weren't for him, I'd be drowning. Marcus knew she was right. His job as a driver paid bills, but not all of them. Life was a puzzle they seemed to solve 1 week at a time. Even so, sometimes, when he came home and found Elias on all fours in the living room, Ava riding on his back like he was a horse, something inside him pinched. A small, sharp feeling he tried to push away. "You're jealous because she likes her great-uncle," Nadia teased, brushing her fingers over his face. "She's supposed to like me first," Marcus answered, half joking, half serious. "You're her father," she said. "No matter who walks into her life, that place is yours." Back then, he believed her. The first real crack appeared during a doctor's appointment. Ava had been running a stubborn little fever, so Nadia booked a checkup. Marcus went with them, more to keep them company than out of worry. The doctor, a calm man with soft eyes and graying hair, read the chart, then frowned slightly. "That's odd," he murmured. "Odd how?" Marcus asked right away. "It's not serious," the doctor said quickly. "It's just that, based on the blood types listed here for you two and for her, the combination doesn't really match." "Doesn't match how?" Marcus pressed. "You mean it's impossible?" The doctor hesitated. "Look, I don't want to create anxiety that may not be necessary," he replied. "Sometimes there are mistakes in recorded blood types. Sometimes the man raising the child isn't the biological father, and that's not my business to judge. But yes, by basic genetics, it doesn't add up." The words drifted in the air like smoke. Sometimes the man raising the child isn't the biological father. At that moment, something cold slid down Marcus's spine. Nadia forced a smile. "It's probably just an error in the paperwork," she said quickly. "My old records have plenty of mistakes, remember? We'll fix it later." But her voice trembled. Just a little. Enough for him to hear it. In the hallway, Nadia squeezed his arm tightly. "Don't start with your paranoia, Marcus. Don't do this." "I didn't say anything," he answered. "Your eyes did." Over the next few days, Marcus started noticing things he'd never paid attention to before. He noticed how Nadia defended Elias every single time. "He's the only one in your family who's always been there," she would say. "He's more of a father to you than half these people." He noticed how she changed the subject. If conversations drifted toward the past, who was where, at what time, who met whom, what year this or that happened. He noticed the low-voiced conversations in the kitchen between her and Elias, conversations that stopped the moment he walked in. He noticed how, one night, while Ava slept on the couch, someone said, "She really looks like you," and neither Nadia nor Elias asked, "Which one of us?" as if both of them already knew. "Do you have something to tell me?" he asked that night. No preamble, no soften the blow. Nadia froze mid-movement with a plate in her hand. "What?" she frowned. "You've lost your mind?" Elias raised both hands defensive. "Boy, don't start," he said, voice low. Marcus looked from one to the other. "It's simple," he said. "Just say no while looking me in the eye. Not, 'You're crazy,' not, 'Don't start,' just, 'No.'" Nadia stared right at him. "No," she said. "I have never cheated on you, even less with your great uncle. That's sick, Marcus." The words were correct, but they tasted rehearsed. Marcus wanted to believe her. He wanted to shut his brain off and remember all the nights Nadia had fallen asleep on his chest. He wanted to remember the times Elias had stood between him and his own father's anger when he was a boy. He wanted to stack all those moments against one ugly suspicion and make it disappear. But then he looked at Ava. He saw in that little girl the sum of all of Elias's mannerisms. And the doctor's numbers came back, cold and merciless. The explosion came at a birthday party. The house was full. Balloons, a chocolate cake, kids running around with frosting on their faces. Music played, people talked over one another, and Ava sat at the head of the table, a pink paper crown crooked on her curls. She blew out the candles, and someone shouted, "Look at this picture," Aunt Rose said, waving her phone. "Ava and Uncle Eli side by side. They look like father and daughter." People laughed. Someone whistled. A voice repeated, "They really do." Marcus took the phone from her hand. In the photo, Elias and Ava smiled cheek to cheek. Same dimple, same curve of the smile, same light in their dark eyes. "Delete that picture," he said, handing the phone back. "What's wrong with you? It was just a joke," she replied. "Delete it," he repeated, firmer. The room quieted. Nadia pulled his arm. "You're going to ruin your daughter's birthday over a joke?" she hissed. "It's not a joke," he answered. It never was, and for the first time he said out loud what had been poisoning his mind for months. "I think that old man is my daughter's father." The words slammed into the room. Faces turned. Laughter died. Even the music suddenly felt too loud. Elias's expression hardened. The older relatives stared. Nadia went pale. "Say that again," she whispered, eyes already shining with tears. "I think," Marcus said, looking at them both, "that you cheated on me with him, and that the little girl I've been calling my daughter is actually his." The word cheated cut through the air like a knife. Nadia covered her mouth. "You've lost your mind," she whispered. "In front of our family? In front of our daughter?" Ava, watching it all with wide, confused eyes, tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Daddy, why are you mad?" she asked, voice small. Marcus looked at her, and for 1 second guilt almost crushed him. But it was too late. Elias stood up slowly, one hand on the edge of the table to steady himself. "You don't know what you're saying," he said quietly, "but if it's answers you want, you're going to get them." 2 days later, they were sitting in front of a lawyer, listening to words like paternity action, court-ordered DNA test, and legal consequences. The lawyer looked at them with the tired curiosity of someone who had watched families burn themselves to ash over less. "You do understand," he said carefully, "that once this process starts, the result won't just answer whether Mr. Elias is the child's father. DNA can reveal other connections, other truths about your family line." Nadia crossed her arms tightly. "I'm not afraid of the truth," she said through clenched teeth. "Who should be afraid isn't me." Marcus felt his stomach flip. He kept telling himself the same thing. "I'm not afraid of the truth." But when he signed the papers, the pen felt like iron in his hand. The night before the test, Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat on the couch, staring at the photos on the wall. Him, Nadia, and Ava at the beach. Ava on her first day of school. Elias holding Ava as a baby, eyes wet with emotion. "If this test proves I'm right," he thought, "I lose my wife, my daughter, and the only family I have left. If it proves I'm wrong, how do I look them in the eyes after this?" He pressed his palms over his face, feeling tears he refused to admit he had. In the next room, Ava slept, her breathing deep and steady. Marcus rested his forehead against her door. "If I'm destroying everything for nothing, God," he whispered, "then let that nothing come quickly. I can't live with this question anymore." Silence answered. Days later, the swabs were taken, cheeks scraped, forms signed, samples sent off to a lab with a cold, clinical name. And now, sitting on a hard wooden bench in a courtroom, Marcus stared at the envelope on the judge's desk. Inside wasn't just a result. It was a verdict on what had been a joke, what had been paranoia, and what had been truth all along. He looked at Nadia, her face wet with tears. He looked at Elias, eyes lowered, hands shaking. And for the first time, another thought crept in. What if the monster in this story isn't my wife, or my great-uncle? What if it's a secret someone buried long before I was even born? The judge reached for the envelope, and Marcus realized he wasn't just about to find out if his great-uncle was his daughter's father. He might be about to find out who had really been his father all along. When the judge finally said, "Mr. Carter, you may speak," Marcus's throat went dry. He had pictured this moment 100 times in the shower, in the car, staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning. In his imagination, his voice was always strong, steady, righteous. Now his knees wanted to buckle. He stood anyway. "My name is Marcus Carter," he began, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. I'm Ava's father, or at least, I thought I was." A murmur moved through the courtroom. Nadia stared at him from the opposite table, eyes red, mascara smudged. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Next to her, Elias sat with his shoulders slightly hunched, a dark suit awkwardly straightened over old bones. He held his hands together like a man in church, lips pressed so tight they almost disappeared. "Tell the court why you requested this DNA test," the judge said. Marcus swallowed. "Because nothing made sense anymore, Your Honor," he replied. "Because my daughter laughs like my great-uncle, stands like my great-uncle, smiles like my great-uncle. And one day a doctor told me her blood type didn't line up with what's on our records." He glanced at Nadia. "I asked my wife if she had anything to tell me," he continued. "She said no. I wanted to believe her. God knows I wanted to believe her." His voice cracked on the word God. "But every joke about Ava looking more like Uncle Eli than me started to feel like people were laughing at me instead of with me. It stopped being funny. It started feeling like the whole room knew something I didn't." "Objection," Nadia's lawyer said weakly. "Speculation." "Overruled," the judge replied. "This is not about what the room knew. It's about what this man believed when he came here." Marcus took a breath. "So I did something I'm not proud of," he went on. "I confronted them in front of our families. I said I thought my wife had slept with my great-uncle. I said I thought he was Ava's real father." He closed his eyes briefly, the memory burning. "I know how that sounds," he said. "I know how disgusting it is. Do you think I wanted that to be true? Do you think any man wants to stand here and say out loud he suspects his wife of cheating with a 70-year-old member of his own family?" A tear slipped down Nadia's cheek. "I came here," Marcus finished, "because I couldn't live inside a question anymore. If they betrayed me, I needed to know. If I was wrong, I needed to pay the price for doubting them. But I needed to know." The judge studied him for a long moment. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," he said. "You may sit." Marcus sat down slowly, his legs heavy. His lawyer put a hand briefly on his shoulder. It didn't help. "Mrs. Carter," the judge said, turning his gaze to Nadia, "you asked for the chance to respond before we open any results. You may do so now." Nadia stood, her hands shaking as she smoothed her skirt. "I married Marcus because he was the first man who made me feel safe," she began. "Not rich, not rescued, not saved, just safe. Like I could be tired and messy and still worth loving." She looked at him, and for a second Marcus saw the girl he'd danced with in a too-small kitchen years ago, when they still believed love could beat rent and bills and exhaustion. "I never cheated on you," she said, each word deliberate. "Not with Elias, not with anyone." She turned to the judge. "This whole nightmare started because of jokes and a blood type on a piece of paper," she continued. "Jokes that went too far, and a record that may be wrong, and because Marcus's head is full of old pain that no one ever helped him unpack." She gestured toward Elias. "Elias stepped in when Marcus's own father stepped out," she said. "When Marcus needed a ride to school, Elias went. When Marcus needed someone to watch his back, Elias was there. When we were drowning with a newborn and no money, Elias showed up with groceries and paid bills we never asked him to pay." Her voice trembled. "Yes, he is close to Ava," she added. "Because he loves her. Because he never learned how to love small. That's not perversion. That's what he's always been. The man who shows up when everyone else disappears." She looked at Marcus again. "I understand why you're hurt," she said softly. "I understand why your mind went to the darkest place possible. You grew up in darkness. You got used to thinking that love comes with a knife hiding behind its back." A tear rolled down her face, but she didn't wipe it away. "But you didn't just question me," she finished. "You questioned our daughter's story. You dragged a 74-year-old man into court like a criminal. You let your fear talk louder than our history." She closed her eyes for a moment. "And if this DNA proves I'm lying, then I lose everything today and I deserve it," she said. "But if it proves I'm telling the truth, then I want it on record that I didn't destroy this family." She sat down, shoulders shaking. The judge nodded slowly, then turned to Elias. "Mr. Elias Carter," he said, "you are the alleged great-uncle, is that correct?" Elias gave a small, crooked smile. "Alleged everything these days, Your Honor," he replied hoarsely. A few people chuckled nervously. The judge did not. "Do you wish to make a statement before I read the results?" the judge asked. Elias hesitated. For a moment, Marcus saw him as he had as a child. Larger than life, a man who could fix anything with his hands, and a joke. Now he just looked old. "I don't have speeches," Elias said, finally standing with effort. "Never been good with fancy words. But I'll say this." He looked at Marcus first. "I never touched your wife," he said plainly. "Not like that. Not ever. Whatever's in that envelope, it won't say I'm Ava's father. I know what I did and what I didn't do." Marcus's chest tightened. He wanted to believe him. Wanted it so badly it hurt. Then Elias turned to Nadia. "You shouldn't have had to stand here and defend yourself from something like that," he said. "I'm sorry for the way this got twisted." Finally, he looked at the judge. "The problem, Your Honor," he went on, "is that the truth don't always travel alone. Sometimes it drags other truths out with it. Truths that have been sleeping a long time." There was a heaviness in his eyes Marcus had never seen before. "If that paper only answered one question," Elias said quietly, "we'd all walk out of here a lot safer. But it's going to answer more than one. And I'm responsible for that, in a way." He cleared his throat. "Whatever it says," he finished, "I'll take what's mine. I'm tired of secrets." He sat back down, the effort of those few words leaving his shoulders sagging. The judge looked at the three of them, the broken husband, the trembling wife, the old man whose secrets clearly weighed more than his years. "In this court," the judge said, "we deal in facts, not rumors, not jokes at barbecues, not guesses made in the dark. Facts." He picked up the envelope. "Inside this envelope," he continued, "are two separate DNA analyses. One compares Ava Carter to Mr. Elias Carter. The other compares Marcus Carter to Mr. Elias Carter." Marcus's heart stopped. He had expected one test, one answer. Seated at his table, he suddenly felt like someone had pulled the floor a few inches lower than he thought it was. "Your attorney requested the additional test," the judge explained, almost gently. "Given the nature of the allegations, it was reasonable to examine the full relationship between these parties." He broke the seal with a slow, deliberate motion. Every sound in the room disappeared. No coughs, no whispers, no footsteps in the hall, just the rustle of paper. The judge read silently for a long time. Marcus watched his eyes move, watched his expression change almost imperceptibly. A tightening around the mouth, a softening around the eyes, a sigh so small only the front row noticed. "Regarding the question of whether Mr. Elias Carter is the biological father of Ava Carter," the judge said at last, "the test shows a probability of 0.0%. Marcus's hand flew to his mouth. "No probability. 0. So he is not the child's father," the judge stated clearly. "Biologically, he is not her dad." Nadia let out a sob, part relief, part exhaustion. Her lawyer squeezed her arm, whispering something no one else could hear. Elias closed his eyes briefly, as if bracing for the next punch. Marcus felt dizzy. He had come prepared for one kind of pain, the pain of betrayal confirmed. He had not rehearsed what to do with relief that tasted like shame. "Ava is mine," he thought, the words arriving through fog. "She really is mine." For a split second, joy flickered. Then it crashed into the memory of every accusation he'd thrown, every hateful word, every night he'd pulled away from his own child because she laughed like an old man who had never touched his wife. "However," the judge said, his voice dropping a little, "the second test addresses the relationship between Mr. Marcus Carter and Mr. Elias Carter." The room sharpened back into focus. The judge looked directly at Marcus now. And in that analysis, he continued, the test is conclusive. Marcus's lungs forgot how to work. He gripped the edge of the table so hard his fingers hurt. In that test, the judge said slowly, carefully, as if lowering something heavy, the probability of paternity is 99.99%. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Marcus didn't understand at first. The words floated around him like pieces of a sentence he hadn't learned yet. In plain terms, the judge clarified, Mr. Elias Carter is not the father of your daughter, Mr. Carter. He paused. But he is your biological father. The words didn't land all at once. At first they were just sounds. He is your biological father. Then the meaning slammed into Marcus like a truck. The air in the courtroom shifted. It felt thinner, heavier, wrong. No, Marcus said before he even knew he was speaking. His voice came out hoarse, almost childish. No, that's not possible. The judge didn't argue. He just held up the paper between his fingers. These are the results, he said evenly. The science is clear. Marcus's eyes darted to Elias. The old man wasn't looking at him. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight, a muscle twitching in his cheek. The same twitch Marcus had seen in the mirror when he was angry. Nadia looked between them, face drained of color. Marcus, she whispered. He took a step back from the table. The room seemed to tilt. So all this time, he managed, his voice shaking. You weren't just my great-uncle? Silence answered him first. Then, slowly, Elias turned his head. His eyes were wet. Not with the sharp tears of fresh pain, but with the heavy kind that belonged to old regrets finally dragged into the light. No, he said softly. I wasn't just your great-uncle. The words broke something inside Marcus. He saw flashes. Being 8 years old and hiding behind Elias when his legal father shouted. Being 12 and having Elias show up at his soccer game when no one else did. Being 16 and letting Elias see his report card first, because his real father never asked. Why? Marcus choked. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't anyone tell me? His grandmother, sitting in the second row, let out a low, wounded sound. Her hand flew to her chest. Because your mother begged us not to, she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. She didn't want you to grow up defined by a mistake. A mistake? Marcus snapped, whipping around to face her. My entire life is built on a lie, and you call it a mistake? Mr. Carter, the judge warned gently, please remember where you are. But Marcus couldn't even hear him anymore. He turned back to Elias. You knew, he said. It wasn't a question. All these years, you knew I was your son. Yes, Elias answered, barely audible. And you let me call another man Dad, Marcus continued, his voice rising. You watched him scream at me, hit me, tell me I was worthless, and you just sat there as Uncle Eli? Elias flinched at every word, like each one was a stone thrown at his chest. I tried to be there in the ways I could, he said. Your mother. Don't you dare hide behind my mother, Marcus cut in. She's not here to explain herself. Enough, the judge said firmly. We are not here to relitigate the choices of the dead. We are here to confirm facts. And the fact is, biologically, Mr. Elias Carter is your father. Legally, your birth records say otherwise. You may address that in a different process if you choose to. The courtroom slowly began to breathe again. Nadia sank back into her seat. Her tears now mixed with something else. Grief, maybe, for a marriage that had just been torn open from a completely different angle than she expected. Marcus sat down too, hard, like his knees had given out. Your Honor, he said, voice suddenly small, if he's my father, and Ava looks like him, that means she just looks like her grandfather. Yes, the judge replied. Sometimes children resemble their grandparents more than their parents. It is not unusual. Marcus let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I tore my family apart over genetics, he whispered. Over a resemblance. He covered his face with his hands. Court adjourned shortly after. The legal part, at least, was over. On paper, it was simple. Elias was not Ava's father. Marcus was. And Elias was Marcus's biological father, though not his legal one. In real life, nothing was simple. People filtered out of the courtroom in clusters, whispering, avoiding eye contact, stealing glances back at the three of them like they were walking, breathing cautionary tales. Marcus remained seated until the room was almost empty. He felt hollow, not calm, not angry, just emptied out. "You can go now," his lawyer said quietly, touching his arm. "We don't have to decide anything today. Just go home. Be with your daughter." He nodded mechanically. Nadia stood a few feet away, her arms wrapped around herself. "So," she said, her voice fragile, "do you believe me now?" He looked at her, really looked at her. He thought about the nights she'd waited up for him, about the times she'd defended him to his own father, about the way she'd held Ava through fevers, tears, nightmares, about the moment she had said, "Ask the DNA, not me," with more exhaustion than defensiveness. "I believe," he said slowly, "that you didn't cheat on me with him. It wasn't the same as I'm sorry, but it was something." "And the rest?" she asked. "All the other things you said? All the times you looked at me like I was dirty? Like our daughter was something disgusting?" He had no good answer. "I was drowning in a question," he said. "I let it swallow everything. That doesn't excuse it. It just explains the shape of the monster." Her eyes filled again. "Do you love me, Marcus?" she whispered. "Or do you just hate being alone?" The question hit harder than the test. He opened his mouth, closed it again. "I don't know who I am right now," he admitted. "I just found out my uncle is my father. That the man who raised me was a stranger in my blood. That I almost accused my wife and my own child of something that never happened. I don't know anything true enough to stand on." She nodded, lips trembling. "Then maybe," she said softly, "we shouldn't make any promises in this state." She picked up her bag. "I'm going to get our daughter," she added. "She's the only person in this whole mess who never lied to anyone." She walked away before he could try to stop her. When the hallway cleared, Marcus finally walked up to Elias. For the first time in his life, he didn't know how to address him. "Uncle? Dad? Elias?" The old man was leaning against the wall, hands clasped in front of him, staring at the floor like it might offer him a different past if he looked hard enough. "You knew," Marcus said again, but this time there was less accusation in it. Just raw, tired disbelief. Elias nodded. "I found out a little while after you were born," he said. "Your mother told me, said she'd made a mistake, that her marriage was already cracked, that I was the crack that would split it in two if the truth came out." "And you agreed to stay quiet?" Marcus asked. Elias's eyes were shining. "I agreed because she asked me to," he replied. "Because she said she could handle her husband's anger if he never found out. Because she didn't want you to grow up with people whispering bastard behind your back." He swallowed hard. "I tried to be there the only way I knew how," he went on. "I went to your games. I slipped you money when you were broke. I gave you rides, gave you advice, gave you everything I thought I could give without ripping your life apart." "You didn't give me the truth," Marcus said. "No," Elias agreed. "I didn't. And that is my biggest failure." He looked older than ever now, not just in his face, but in his soul. "Do you know why I was so close to Ava?" he asked. "Why I held on to her like that?" Marcus hesitated, then shook his head. "Because I saw you in her," Elias said, voice breaking. "And I missed the chance to hold you as my son. I thought, maybe I could get it right one generation later." Without calling it what it was, he let out a bitter laugh. Turns out secrets don't skip generations, he added. They just arrive bigger. Marcus didn't realize he was crying until a tear hit the back of his hand. So what now? He asked. You want me to start calling you Dad? You want me to change my last name? Pretend the last 30-something years didn't happen? No, Elias said quietly. I don't want anything from you that you don't choose to give. You owe me nothing. I owe you the truth. That's all I'm trying to finally pay. They stood there side by side, two grown men with the same set of eyes, the same line in their brows, the same stubbornness carved into their faces. I'm angry, Marcus said. At you, at my mother, at my so-called father, at myself, at this whole ridiculous blood lottery. I'd be worried if you weren't, Elias replied. And I don't know if I can forgive you, Marcus added. I don't know if I deserve it, Elias answered. They both let the silence sit between them like a fourth person. But I want to try, Marcus said finally. Not today, not tomorrow. I need to go home, hold my daughter, figure out if my wife and I can even look at each other without seeing this courtroom first. He took a shaky breath. But if I ever decide I want to know my father, he said, not my great-uncle. Will you still be here? Elias's eyes filled and overflowed. If I'm breathing, he said, I'll be there. They didn't hug. Not yet. Some distances don't close in a single day, even when DNA says they should. But as Marcus walked away, he realized something. For the first time in his life, he knew exactly who his father was. Not the man on his birth certificate. Not the ghost he'd tried to imagine as better than the one he had. A flawed, cowardly, selfish, guilty man who'd also done his best in crooked, clumsy ways. It didn't fix anything, but it was real. That night, Marcus stood in the doorway of Ava's room. She was asleep, arms sprawled above her head, mouth slightly open. Just like he slept when he was a boy, his grandmother used to say. He walked in quietly and knelt beside her bed. I'm your father, he whispered, more to himself than to her. No test can change that. A wave of shame rolled over him as he remembered all the times he'd pulled back, even a little because of who she reminded him of. I'm sorry, he said to the dark, to her, to the little boy he'd once been. I'm sorry I let my fear make me doubt you. Ava stirred, then blinked her eyes open. Daddy? She mumbled. You're crying? He smiled through it. Yeah, he said. Just fixing something inside. Did I do something wrong? She asked. No, baby, he said quickly. You're the only thing we all did right. She smiled sleepily and reached out, placing her small hand on his cheek. Then don't be sad, she whispered. You're my daddy. That's the only thing that matters. For the first time in a long time, he let those words sink in without adding a question mark. In Verdict of Hearts, the law had spoken. The husband was Ava's father. The old man was not. The real betrayal had happened decades before, long before the girl was ever born. But beyond the paperwork, a different kind of verdict was still pending. Could a man forgive the parent who hid in plain sight? Could a woman forgive a husband who put her on trial in his mind before he ever walked into court? Could a child grow up unpoisoned by a truth that arrived too late? That part wasn't written yet. That part was up to them. And now if you had been sitting on that bench, watching a man accuse his wife and great-uncle, only to find out the DNA turned on him, who would you judge more harshly? The father who stayed silent? The wife who carried the weight of his doubt? Or the man who almost burned his family down over a resemblance, when, deep down, it was his own reflection he was running from?